We would be honored if you would join us.
I got a bad feeling about this.
You are the chosen one!
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
It's a trap!
I don't like sand. It's coarse, rough, and irritating.
I am your father.
Hey now, welcome to 160 of the Batman Unfilmed podcast. I'm your host today for this episode, Rick Shew. Here with me is BOF's podcast ringleader, Ryan Haas. What's up, Ryan?
Oh, you call me a ringleader. It makes me feel like a bully. It makes me insecure, Rick.
Okay, and moving on from... not even sure how to respond to that, to be honest with you. But anyway,
Boy.
I'm going to loop in our fan, our friend, our Star Wars super fan, the host of Fanboy Garage, the podcast, the one and only, Aaron Verola.
What up, guys? This is the way. Good to be here. Thanks.
This is the way. Is
This
that
is
from
the
a
way.
Star Wars thing?
This is the way. This is the way. Aaron, it's good to be on a podcast with you, buddy. We saw each other in New York a couple months ago, hung out in Greenwich Village, man.
Yeah,
A
man,
week.
some good old
Yeah, you
artichoke
saw him.
pizza.
You saw him 1 week after I met him. So
Seriously. Yeah.
that was dumb.
I take
Rick's the low man on the totem pole.
I take 3 steps. Ryan's got to take 5. I take 6. He takes 10.
It was good to meet both of you guys.
I kid.
in person.
Even in text threads, yeah. But yes, it was good to meet you in person, Aaron.
Amazing. No, it really was. We also have very special returning guest. She is an actress, which is in a roundabout way how her and I actually met. A lifelong athlete. She's half Canadian and she's a super nerd. Miss Courtney Cheek.
Hello,
Courtney,
how's it going? I'm so glad to be back.
welcome back.
Thanks, glad to be here. It's super fun.
You know our mutual friend Brian Chatlin.
I do know Brian.
That's right. That introduced us. He actually went to the press screening with me of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise
Yes.
of Skywalker. Right?
Yes.
He's got a cool little video up on BOF. Hey,
Very
speaking
cool, yeah.
speaking of that, it's like you set up the.
We're
segue.
talking about
Look at
Batman,
that!
right?
What a good segue.
All right, so guys, this is one of our Star Wars satellite episodes. We launched a Star Wars kind of satellite show, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and I always like to say, for those little trolls that want to know why Batman Unfilmed does a Star Wars show, because Burger King sells chicken sandwiches. All right, I say it every time.
Nerd culture is nerd culture is nerd culture. It's all encompassing, or at least it should be.
We have a lot of stuff to talk about Batman on the horizon. Obviously, Ryan is handling the podcast these days, doing all kinds of great content. And the Batman to start principal photography here in just a few weeks. And so
Very exciting.
stay with BOF for that. So anyway, today, guys, is actually, we are recording right now. It's Sunday, December 22nd, 2019. And we just wrapped opening weekend for the final Skywalker episode, The Rise of Skywalker. So, guys, I don't know. Listen, it's an emotional thing for me to be a lifelong fan, to know that the Skywalker Saga has come to an end. Does everybody, before we get into the movie, can everybody just kind of generally agree about that? Is it just kind of an emotional thing to think that?
It was. I think it was very emotional. I mean, I walked out of the theater and I think I saw like adults to kids like wiping their eyes. I think it hit everybody.
Yeah, it's an emotional time. Ryan, I know that it's been emotional for you as well.
Yeah, every time. Yeah, so I've seen the movie 3 times in 3 different formats at 2 different theaters. On Thursday, I saw it twice. I went to the fan event, early fan event at 5, and then I saw it in 2D then, and then right after that at 9:45 I saw it in IMAX 3D, and then on Saturday I saw it at the Alamo Drafthouse in regular 3D. So it's been a great experience, and yeah, I mean, we'll get into it, but I've got very emotional at many points in the movie. Even stupid, silly things got me. Like I don't know what the goal for the film was, but if they were kind of trying to do these heartfelt gut punches, they all kind of landed for me. Even if they're like fan servicey or whatever, I kind of don't care. It kind of worked for me.
Yeah, well, the whole fan servicey thing and working, not working is a great way to really launch the conversation. And I heard a little grunt from Aaron, but we're going to actually we're going to start with someone positive and uplifting. That's all I know. Anyway, Courtney, we're going to start with you.
Oh, cool,
So,
sweet.
How was what was first of all? How many times have you seen it now?
I've only seen it once, but I've got 2 more times scheduled with my family and then with some other friends. But just to like preface, I'm relatively new to the Star Wars fandom. I didn't grow up with the films. I grew up with different parts of nerd culture. So this has been a relatively recent adaptation for me. And even as a newer fan, I really appreciated a lot of what they did just to set that up. Overall, I think they did a really good job. And I was just earlier today reading an interview and some statements from J.J. Abrams, and I think they made deliberate decisions to kind of bring everything full circle and pay homage to the original films that came out and kind of the journey that the entire franchise has been on. So I really enjoyed it, and that's coming from someone who I appreciate it for the history and everything it's done for the cinematic industry in general, but I also think that it did something special for the fans that grew up with this. I mean, like I said, I saw people, wiping their eyes as they walked out. My boyfriend personally cried 3 times. So, and he's remembers as a toddler being shown the first film and, watching them with his, his grandparents and his dad. Like, it's a big generational franchise. And I think it's really hard to point to any other property out there that's able to do that and cross those gaps and cross those generations and really unify people on a really, if you think about it, simplistic piece of content. So I think it did something that it really to this day hasn't really been done, if you think about that. And I think that was deliberate, and I think they did it in a way that was successful.
100%, and absolutely well said. I was about to say, let's just wrap the show right there, and that's it. And peace out, and thanks for listening. Follow us on Twitter. But no, it's really well said. And Courtney, actually, I'm very aware of your journey with the franchise. I know Ryan is as well. It's really truly why I wanted to have you on the show. I wanted different levels of fandom on the show, right?
Yeah.
And you were first introduced. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe on our last show together, the first Star Wars movie you saw, period, not in the theater, but
was
period,
Episode 7, right?
Correct. Yes.
The Force Awakens, which incidentally is the first, from beginning to end, the first movie my young daughters watched, was just like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we watched Last Jedi, and then I took them today to see Rise of Skywalker. All right, cool. So overall, you like it? You think it's a good love letter and a good send off? Okay,
absolutely.
I'm gonna actually, Aaron. I know you're technically the guest, but I want to end with you on this one for good reason, because it'll be a healthy launch into some friendly banter here,
sure.
or debate, should I say?
Yeah.
Ryan Haas, I know that you loved it. Just kind of give the audience just some general feelings about it.
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, I was kind of glad that I saw it in 3D, because that way when I do cry when I watch the movie, people can't see the tears.
Hey, I don't want to I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to say this. I thought the same thing today 3 or 4 different times. I'm crying, and half the movie I'm holding my 5-year-old, because it's a little intense for a 5-year-old.
Oh yeah,
especially in we saw it in. Not IMAX, because we saw it at the Cinemark. What is Cinemark?
Like the Cinemark XD. That's where I saw it too.
XD.
Big
IMAX,
screen.
3D, yeah. But anyway, so go ahead. Yeah, I was thinking that today. I was like, I'm going to have my glasses on.
Yeah, I mean, all the things that they did in this movie that wrapped not just this trilogy up, but this whole series of 9 films, it worked on so many levels. And as a Star Wars fan of all 3 trilogies, everything that was related to those, or within this movie, within this trilogy, within the whole 9, all that stuff just landed for me. And the first time I saw it, our podcast pal and super Star Wars fan Paul Herman, he said, like, the second viewing is always, for a Star Wars movie, is always like the most important one if you're a huge fan, in terms of cementing your overall feelings about it as an individual film. But for me, the first viewing is always kind of a wash, but that is my test of how well the straight up emotional beats of the movie work. I mean, because the more viewings you have, and the more you're on the internet, and the more you see stuff, the more the movie gets picked apart, and the more people start trying to break it down, or finding, quote, plot holes, or things that don't make sense to them, or things they don't like. But in terms of the first viewing, I mean, a month ago, I muted Star Wars and the Rise of Skywalker off Twitter so I wouldn't see anything. And then I just went cold on Twitter. I mean, I was moving into a new house right before I saw the movie, so I was able to easily ignore social media. So, and I stopped watching trailers. You kept texting me like, dude, watch this trailer. I got to talk about this trailer. And I'm like, nope, I'm not watching it. You know, so I was trying to be really fresh when I went in to see the movie. So yeah, that first viewing, like I was just letting it play out and seeing what it did for me, and it, like I said, it just worked for me. Even the big revelations, and some of them, in the movie is kind of clunky, and some of it could have a lot of things could have made more sense if the whole trilogy was planned out from the start. But damn if a lot of that stuff just didn't work at the end of the day.
I'm going to reject that notion right here. I'm going to get it on the record about the plan from the start bullshit, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But I love your commentary here, and I'm thrilled that you loved it. Now, what I would say also to you is that I 100% agree in terms of watching something for the second time. I think that's the case for most films, but particularly a franchise that you love so much, because you always go in with these expectations, even if you don't realize it, and then you have to kind of let it absorb and then go see it again. And I've been the last several Star Wars films I've seen for the first viewing have been in this Angelica Theater in Dallas, which is an art. I think it's a chain anyway.
It's an art house,
it's an art. Yeah, exactly. You're gonna go there to see like a cool French film or something. So your seating is like, you know, from 1996, and you know it's not, and your screen is from 1989. You know what I mean? It's not a place to see Star Wars for the first time, especially in a room with like 10 people. But I gave it a B in my first review on BOF proper, and then my second viewing is a B+. I saw it again after that. I saw it third time today. I'm leaning towards like an A-. But
come on, Rick. It's B+. B+.
I don't know. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why.
Please do. Okay.
There's not another Star. It's not. Listen, it's not the caliber of The Last Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, or Revenge of the Sith. It will never be those films. Okay, ever, and it will not even be the original film, because I don't grade Star Wars New Hope anymore. It doesn't.
I totally agree with that.
It doesn't need to be graded. It's on an island of its own. You leave it alone. It's a GD masterpiece.
It's up there with like a Gone with the Wind or Wizard of Oz or something like that.
You leave it alone. It wasn't even supposed to be made. It wasn't supposed to work. It should not have been this cultural phenomenon. You can't compare it. But it's, you know, it's a strong B+, dude. God.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get to the person who thinks it's a giant F.
That's not fair. That's not fair. I think it's fine. I think it's
F for fine. There you go.
It's an okay Star Wars film at best. I think, you know, Ryan, you and I, you know, we did similar things where, you know, I tried my best to go dark on Twitter, which is like impossible. But, you know, to your point, Rick was sending us all these trailers. And I was like, dude, stop, please. I can't. I haven't seen the trailer since the last one that dropped, like the last one that they said was going to be the last trailer.
Around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, the final trailer or whatever. Yeah. Didn't watch any TV spots. And I have to say, I think the start of the film really kind of set the stage for me, and I was like, oh, this is going to be different. And I was building up a lot of that emotional stuff because of that 3PO scene, and I'm like, oh man, they're gonna make me go and bring a box of Kleenex to this theater. I'm gonna be bawling my eyes out, and I legit cried once, which was I tweeted about this today. I'm disappointed in that. I think a lot of the fan service was on the wall.
Is that the same thing as On the Nose?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, on the nose, on the wall, whatever. It's like I could see it. I could see it in plain sight. I could see it coming, and it just didn't land for me. The one that just caught me off guard, which is the scene, was the Chewbacca scene, where they tell him Leia's gone, and he.
Oh yeah.
I just lost.
I tell you what. I mean, that's one of the many times that got me. But it's like that could have and this is such a testament to butchering his name, Joonas Suotamo, who plays Chewbacca. That could so easily have been a snicker moment. Like if it was done wrong, it had to be done just the right way to sell that. You know, just big. You know, crying and stuff. But man, that got me
away, and he like broke down. I was like, oh my god! Like even thinking about it right now is choking me up. But here's the thing: so the end of the film is beautiful. And I would say that the third act, for me, saved this film because this would have gone down as one of the worst Star Wars films ever. If it hadn't been for that third act. And I do think they do a great job of kind of... Okay. No, but they do a great job of tying everything up. I do feel that the name drop at the end of Rey Skywalker was so... yeah.
Ugh, what? Like, good or bad?
No, just not earned. Not earned, and not in the way that I would have seen it kind of come together. But when you ask the question about whether or not we think this is the close of the Skywalker saga, it's not, because there's a Skywalker.
Okay,
technically,
the close of the Skywalker saga.
It's the close of Luke and Leia and all of them.
It just means that you're telling a story. I mean, the Dark Knight Rises was kind of the end of the road for Bruce Wayne, but
sure.
it was Batman taking on.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, from a Star Wars perspective, but Skywalker, that could still be a thing. Is what I'm saying.
It sure could.
It could, and they may resort back to that. They may not. I don't know.
Sure.
It depends. But I want to touch on that for a moment about the Rey not earned thing. I think it was absolutely earned, and on a multitude of levels. Okay, go ahead.
I would say not earned in the sense that they did some wonky shit with her parentage, which I just wholeheartly disagree with.
Well, here's the deal. Okay, and this is going to open up a can of worms in terms of like the 800-pound gorilla in the room was the Last Jedi quote retconned, right? And
no, not at all.
No, I agree. I don't think it was either. Do I think there was some conscious decisions and things?
Sure.
Now, of course. Now listen, on my first review, and then Courtney, jump in here on this and tell me what you think, because in my first review I said that I felt like there were far too many scenes that were just like, okay, online fans, we're going to correct some of these things you've been whining about online for 2 years. But the worst part about it is, the more I thought about it, and especially after I saw the movie again, I'm like, so they can't make any creative decisions that might actually fall into place under the umbrella of what some fans wanted, because fans were bitching about stuff before the trilogy was even told anyway. Right. Like, it wasn't.
And I've heard like JJ and them say stuff like they knew from the start, right, that every single creative decision they make, story, costume, everything, off. Yeah, it was going to piss somebody off. So they just had to kind of just do what they're going to do. And
I'll be honest with you, I'm not one of those people, right? I'm not pissed off about this film. This is Star Wars, right? Like, this is part of who I am. I did a whole Twitter thread on my love for this franchise, and so nothing's going to change that, right? Certainly not the Rise of Skywalker and my feelings towards it. Do I think certain things could have been done differently? Absolutely, 100%. Do I think it was the best made Star Wars film? Not at all. I think that there was a lot of there's a lot of lipstick on the pig. And I
love your phrases on this show today.
They had to get this thing across the finish line and kind of close it up. And maybe it's because of The Last Jedi that this had to be rushed. Some of the stuff had to be rushed, but there were some critical decisions here that I think put Star Wars as a franchise at risk.
But the Star Wars has a history of this. The prequels were 3 films of Anakin turning into Vader. And as much as I love Revenge of the Sith, and I do, I think it's a work of art, and a beautiful work of art at that. But even the transition from Anakin to Darth Vader seems rushed in that movie.
Oh yeah, so that's one of my biggest
absolutely
critiques.
Yeah. So Courtney, I want to go to you on this. As someone that's kind of a super nerd culture fan, but a quasi casual fan of Star Wars, did you watch this movie at all, at any point feel like that something was being course corrected from a previous movie, or forced, or just over the top fan service? So Courtney, as a super fan in terms of nerd fandom and everything, but it's kind of a quasi casual super or Star Wars fan, did you feel like watching The Rise of Skywalker at any point? Did anything feel heavy handed to you, or trying to course correct another film or anything like that?
I did, but I think that's part of it is I also come from a film background, so like I studied this stuff, and I went to 4 years of school, and then we picked this stuff apart. But I do think that knowing what I understand now about Star Wars, there was a lot of it that was done in episodes 1, 2, and 3 that did kind of change the course of where the original trilogy was trying to aim towards, and that happens with anything. It's like a game of telephone. You tell the first person something, by the time it gets to the end, it's shifted a lot. And so I think that happened with the original intentions of the first 3 films. So by the time it got to The Rise of Skywalker, there was a lot of things that they wanted to do, not only for the fans, but in terms of story. And that's one thing that I think this film in particular does a really good job of. It really does service the story. It answers questions. It gives you a process of events. It helps you figure out why these characters are on the journey they're on. And at the end of the day, that's what stories do. It may not service all of the maybe politically motivated or current climate questions that we're looking for, but I don't think that's what their intention was. There were moments where I remember seeing the whole thing with, like, to your point about the parents. Like, yeah, it was a little interesting, and I remember thinking, well, that's weird, but then that answers the question, what happened to her parents? So they had to come up with something that would motivate her as a character, as a person, as a human, to want to go and find this light that's inside of her. So I feel like there was a lot of those hard course corrections, but I feel like they were necessary to give the character and the person motivation. Because, like, as an actress, and Rick, you can relate to this too, if your character as a person, or even you as a human, don't have motivation to do anything, then, like, what is it servicing the story? You're just doing something for the sake of doing it?
So I kind of disagree with that. And the reason being is that in episode 8, they set that up like she's given this, I don't want to say burden, but this responsibility to kind of like lead the Jedi, right? And she is put on a very different path. She makes a clear decision that she's going to continue to go this road, while Ben Solo, aka Kylo Ren, is going to go down his road. So it kind of sets up the typical good versus evil story. So at all costs, her goal should be to stop evil. The parentage thing had already been answered to a degree in episode 8. But they wanted to add this extra wrinkle and make it about the lineage thing again, about the blood and all of this other stuff, which I just think was unnecessary at this point because we had already closed that chapter. The other thing it did, I think, and regardless, like, Adam Driver is a force in this movie, and I, pun intended, and throughout the course of this trilogy, he's amazing. Absolutely. But what they did was he was set up to be the villain, right? He is the villain of this trilogy. And instead, they undermined that by adding Palpatine. And I think that actually hurt. Like, I mean, it created an opportunity for his redemption, which I personally didn't really want. But
I don't know. I was all about it. I love it. I love that part.
And I mean, it was great. The way it was executed was fine. I was like, okay, if we're going to do it, like, great. You bring in Han Solo and Leia, all that stuff. That was great. But again, I think he would have been better because he's so scary in episode 8.
And then they kind of skip over all
and
that.
And it's like, he's out in
it's
the
like
galaxy.
It's like in Batman v Superman, where you're like, oh, they skipped the part where everybody likes Superman.
Right, exactly. And so they kind of go down this whole, this path, and he quickly submits to Palpatine. Like, I'm gonna do
he doesn't submit to him.
Not submit, but he goes along with the plan after.
He says I've got other plans the whole time. He never planned on following what he said.
I think he plays along for his own end game, which is the whole point.
His plan. Yeah, he goes to Palpatine. He says he's going to kill him, and then Palpatine says what he wants, and he's like, okay, I'll do that. But really, his plan is to turn Rey to the dark side and them go kill him together, which is exactly what Rey's vision was. That matched up with it. Which makes sense because of their connection that they explain more of.
And by the way, very specifically mirrors the OT, right? Okay, Darth Vader was set up to be the bad guy, and it turns out that he had some right
already done.
But this it's
like poetry.
It's poetry, man. Aaron,
and
Aaron, and another thing about her lineage was established in The Last Jedi. I think that is I think that
that's her moment of like it's true from a certain point of view.
That's her certain point of view moment. Go ahead.
And I think it comes to a perspective where it's like a bug like buzzing in your ear. Like the first time you realize, oh, this is my lineage, the bug's in the ear, you swat it away. If that bug keeps coming back like 10 million times, you better believe you're gonna want to stab that thing and watch it die. So like I think it got to a point where she realized, okay, I can't turn away from this. I can't walk away from this anymore. And that happens to us as humans all the time. You get to a point where you come to a realization that you do have to take this action even though it may not have been your first choice. I mean, that's all part of the hero's journey to begin with. So just looking at it on paper, it makes sense to me at least.
Absolutely. And I would say this also. I think the events in The Last Jedi are and always were a part of her journey. They weren't. It wasn't written in permanent marker. Yeah. I go back to my wife, and I say this a lot on Twitter. My wife, who by the way really liked the movie today a lot, but she loved The Last Jedi, and I remember seeing in the theater with her, and she was like, "Oh, that when Kylo tells her that her parents were nobody, and they were." Yep. And she was like, oh, he's messing with her. He's just trying to get in her head. She didn't look at that even then as, oh, okay, well, crap.
Well, there she goes. Like, that's the end of her story.
Yeah, that's the end of her story. We got to own that now. So I think whoever directed episode 9 had the freedom to do that. And again, Ryan didn't set it up where he couldn't. Ryan Johnson makes a great point in the commentary about he mirrors Empire Strikes Back. That moment,
it's the hardest thing that she could hear.
The hardest thing when Luke was told that I'm your father by Vader, hardest thing he could hear. When she was told by Kylo, your parents are nobody. Yep. You come from nothing. Hardest thing she could hear.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
Right.
No, I wholeheartedly agree with it. I'm just. I think it was a little bit convenient.
I don't know. Well, coming from a female perspective too, I think that's another thing you got to remember is as women, we don't have a lot of strong female leads to look at. And I think honestly that plays part of it too. Like as a woman, we're told a lot, oh, your background doesn't matter. Oh, where you come from doesn't matter. So like just to take this to another spin here, like I think it honestly like it spoke to me on that level too. And I know it spoke to my friends on that level. So not only I think was it a parallel to like our lives as like women in this world today, but also in terms of, her being told that was also a motivator. Yeah, it was the hardest thing for her to hear, but then at some point it's going to motivate her to do something about it. And another thing I just loved about when I saw it, there were all these little girls in Rey and Jen Urso costumes. That was incredible. That wouldn't have happened in those first, 3-4 films or whatever had, these strong female characters like Leia and, been established. And I think Star Wars has done a really good job of establishing that and showing like young girls that they matter too. And yeah, their background, maybe someone tells them it's not important, but they can make it important and they can make it change.
Absolutely. God, I love that. And I'm sitting there today with my daughters, Courtney, really everybody. But check this out. I'm thinking, man, we're going into this Star Wars film with Rey, who, by the way, is in my top 3 favorite characters.
Absolutely, as she should be.
In all of Star Wars, Rey is rad. Oh, yeah. Okay? And that's a quote from Paul Herman to give credit where credit is due. But I love that Rey is rad. We should hashtag that. But leading into the movie, Wonder Woman 84, which, by the way, looked amazing on the big screen. And then
Black Widow, my woman!
Right after her, Black Widow. And I'm looking at my young daughters going, man, I'm just so glad you're growing up. As crazy as certain things are, obviously, that is in terms of the female empowerment in film is pretty great.
Like, that didn't exist when I was a kid, so that's incredible. I love it.
I'll take. Well, Courtney, I'll have you on my political podcast. We'll have a pop culture political thing. We'll tie all that.
Done. But okay, moving on.
So let's do this because this could be a 4-hour show because it's people that are passionate about Star Wars. Ryan, what are like when you first saw it? Okay.
Yes.
Versus now.
Yes.
What are the things that have improved the most, and what are things that, if anything, you went backwards on, if such a thing even exists?
Well, I would say that the things that I thought were clunky, I'm getting more used to, and because whenever you see a film like this, it's a puzzle, right? And I talked about that before. It's like the more you see it, the more you figure out what works, what doesn't work, what fits, what doesn't fit. And then you try to either, if you're a comic book person, you try to like see what's canon, how does this link to that? And there's so many things in the movie that, you know, it tries to be everything to everybody, right? And we all know that the last film of a trilogy or whatever, you know, when something ends, it's not always going to please everybody, right? So, so some things on my first viewing, just, you know, things are convenient, things are clunky the way that they're done. You know, they sometimes they do a lot of telling instead of showing certain things, which kind of surprised me. They're like when Rey tells Finn about the vision she had, I'm like, well, maybe they could have incorporated her seeing that vision 2 or 3 other times during the film, right? Like, why do we have to, like, you know, why does she have to just say it out? Like, you know, there's some things like that just felt clunky. And of course, how her parentage is revealed or her lineage is revealed, it is convenient, it is clunky. It does make me feel like they could and should have had more seeds in the other 2 movies to kind of build to it a little bit more, especially when Palpatine is involved. I mean, it's convenient, but that's the kind of thing, like I said, that has actually improved as I've done my additional viewings, because it makes more and more sense. It makes sense in the story. I've listened to, you know, J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio, the screenwriter, you know, talk about why they made that decision and why it fits and all that stuff, and their decisions make sense to me. And then you just try to think about the thematic stuff.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
unnatural.
So like I'm just thinking of like the trilogy as a whole in terms of family legacy, and you know they have to have their cake and eat it too in terms of she's nobody, you know, but they were nobodies because they wanted to be, because they wanted to save her. Like, so they made that choice. So
by the way, was that Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday doing that? That was the worst thing I've ever done in my life ever.
That's awesome.
Anyway, Aaron, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Are you just done? Are you tapped out?
No. I'm just
podcast.
Just listening.
Star Wars is dead to me. I know you. I know you want to.
I mean, some things jump out of left field, like when they're on the desert planet, and she just starts grabbing the transport. I'm like, whoa, okay, it is. They jump on the shark here, but then I start to think about it. I'm like, nah. No, we've seen crazier things in Star Wars. And,
that's cool as shit. And if she's being trained by Leia, like I'd expect nothing less. Yeah, exactly. Right?
Yeah,
and, you know, she moved the boulders before.
Like it was a little jarring the first time, but you know the additional times I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm down with this.
That opening scene with her with the rocks and Leia and the training. And listen.
Man,
when people say the movie starts off clunky, I mean, I don't know what movie you were watching. That whole sequence is amazing. Okay, Aaron, super fan, Star Wars fanboy garage. Aaron, talk to me, baby. Give me your top 3 favorite things about this movie.
Favorite things?
Because here's the deal. What I promise is going to happen, because I know you. I'm in your head, Aaron.
That's not weird.
I'm every voice of everybody
you've ever heard in your head.
That part was badass. I'm sorry. I love that.
Right, Snoke train you will. I killed Snoke. I'll kill you. Okay, so talk to me. Give me your dude. Aaron Driver's like, I mean, look,
Adam Driver,
dude. Adam Driver.
Aaron.
I'm as Anyway, Aaron, talk to me. Give me your top 3 favorite things about this movie.
Okay, top 3 things. Most of it happened in the third act. So I liked when I actually really loved when Rey goes to Octo and attempts to kind of pull a Luke, and she throws the lightsaber into the fire and it gets caught by Luke.
Can you pause there for just a second? For everybody out there saying that's a retcon of
it's not.
It's not. 100%. Listen, let's just say that there was no backlash to that scene, online backlash, by the way. To that moment,
they would still do this scene.
They would still do this scene because it's funny between the two of the characters because he did.
Sure, he does. And what he says with a nod and a wink is spits it right out like Anakin. Well, like Obi-Wan said to Anakin when he lost his lightsaber.
Yeah,
which was
that whole scene scene improved my subsequent viewings too. I thought that was kind of that whole scene. It is kind of too quick to me.
Sure.
But everything that happens in it has actually improved for me over multiple viewings.
Okay.
Just that whole conversation between the two of them. I'm not necessarily particular about the rising of the X-wing because I do think that's partly a retcon of the Last Jedi.
No, it's a throwback to Empire Strikes Back, dude.
No, I know it's a throwback, but
Empire.
I know. It's a throwback, but it's at the detriment of the Last Jedi.
No, I don't know. I disagree with that.
That doesn't undo what happened in the Last Jedi.
I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why.
You need to get off YouTube videos.
No. YouTube videos. Here's why.
And by the way, I've interrupted you so many times. You haven't got through number 1 yet. I'm so sorry.
No, I know. Seriously. And I'm not even going to explain why it's a retcon. I'll just let.
Okay, give us our 3, and I promise you, I'll shut up.
I love the use of Force Skyping throughout the course of the film. I thought that was brilliant. I love the fight scene in Kylo Ren's quarters. I thought that was brilliantly executed, and just the struggle between the two of them was great. And then I love the end. I loved how they used that to defeat the Knights of Ren and ultimately defeat the Emperor again. So those were 3. Anything that had to do with the Force, I thought was brilliant.
Which, by the way, it's that's J.J. Abrams incorporating some of the best stuff in The Last Jedi, because the Force got
100%.
The stuff between Rey and Kylo and The Last Jedi. Some of my favorite Star Wars stuff. Period.
Yeah,
I totally
so
agree with
that's
that.
the whole thing. It's like you don't get that stuff unless Rian Johnson did. And that was straight up from Rian Johnson in The Last Jedi. He came up with that.
Yeah, and the other thing, and just if I could give like sort of runners up here, it would be the tie-in to the Mandalorian with the child using his Force healing powers. I loved seeing that. I thought it was used a little bit too much, but I did like seeing it.
When she heals him initially, and they're on the Death Star, the remains of it, and that exchange between them, guys, that's one of the moments I cried.
Oh, yeah.
And it's listen,
when Han Solo shows up.
Hold on,
dude.
I was even before
Dude,
that.
She took his scar away.
I'm talking about between the two of them, and when she says I did, when she's referencing the hand extension in The Last Jedi, and she said, "Well, I did want to hold your, I did want to hold your, I wanted to hold Ben's hand." I was like, "Oh my god." Look, hey Courtney, you know what I jumped on right there? I was like, sign me up on that. What's the hashtag with the two of them hooking up?
Rayla.
Right?
Yeah, whatever their mashup of their name is. My God. No, but I think that was a really good moment that showed that she wasn't some monster, and I think it reinforced the archetype of her character, that she really is light and she's not this dark force. And I think that moment reinforced it to not only Kylo Ren, but also herself. And I think that was a really strong moment for Rey as a character, too.
Absolutely. And that whole sequence, and by the way, his redemption worked for me so well. And at the end, when he saves her, and when we were walking out of the theater, my wife's like, I love the movie. I just have a little bit of issue with the fact that why did he die and she didn't when she did the same thing to him? I go, well, first of all, she's a little bit more powerful than him, I think. Secondly, he brought her back from the dead. She was dead. She saved him.
He's
from
traded
dying.
one life for another, basically. Which takes more strength than healing a wound.
And he gave his life for her.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful, and becomes one with her. And the whole thing with "be with me," be with me.
Oh, and all the voices.
I want to talk about that very specifically. And Courtney, I'm going to let you lead the charge on that, because I cried again today. It's one of my favorite scenes in Star Wars ever. But back to the moment on the Death Star. I thought his redemption was so beautiful, and Adam Driver is a tour de force as an actor.
Oh, yeah.
And his transformation when she leaves, and then he imagines his father being there. And by the way, Ryan, I called it. Told you Harrison.
You did. I mean, I was
told you Harrison would be back. But
I mean, I just thought pretty much everything that you said, mostly in a certain point of view was in the movie. But Harrison Ford being back as Han Solo, flashbacks. There were flashbacks, dude. When they showed freaking Luke and Leia lightsaber training, I lost it. I lost it then,
so
too.
good. So Courtney,
Yes.
I predicted, and I'm a miserable idiot. So the fact that I got 3 things right is a miracle. But I predicted that Harrison Ford would be in the film in some capacity. I predicted flashback scenes.
Oh, yeah.
And then I predicted Hayden Christensen's Force Ghost, which we did get.
Technically, he is a Force. Yeah, exactly.
Very-
see, that whole thing is derived from A New Hope.
A New Hope.
Luke just
Obi-Wan.
hears Obi-Wan. That's the first Force Ghost you see or hear.
And I want to tie something into that too, very specifically about the Obi-Wan talking to Rey in The Force Awakens in that moment. But let's go real quick and
Does it
finish
have
up with
anything to
this
do with
Harrison
Ewan
Ford thing.
McGregor?
Aaron, talk to me. Tell me that you like that scene between he and his dad.
Oh no, I absolutely did. I thought it was great, and I'm glad that they made it a memory and they played it out exactly the way it was played out in The Force Awakens, just with a different decision, which was the decision that Han was looking for.
And then think about the resonance, just the way it bookends with Force Awakens. Now, when you go back and rewatch the movies, all that kind of stuff, it is like poetry.
Oh, absolutely.
It'll definitely.
Yes, Ryan, which is why this whole notion that it wasn't mapped out is nonsense. We just are too privy to how this.
Oh, come on,
we're
Rick.
too privy to how the sausage is made. That's not how this works. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
You watch all 3 of those films now and tell me, man, I wish these things would have been radically different if they were planned out. What difference does it make if they were planned out or they were 100% improvised? If the creators make it all connect and work and it works for us, we love all 3 of these films, so why would you want them? You know what I'm saying? All right, so go ahead.
But to that end, I mean, while as important as Han is to Kylo or to Ben Solo, I think Leia's sacrifice to finally reach out to her son through the Force was brilliantly played.
Dude.
1000% agree with that.
Regardless of the fact if they used the body double and all that other, the logistics of it, but I thought it was brilliant for a couple of reasons. One, in the novelization of the Aftermath saga, so that the trilogy books that they did, they talk a little bit about Leia being pregnant and being in touch with Ben while he's in the womb and understanding him. And I'm glad that they finally put that together, because we got a glimpse of, and again, this is another thing that I thought The Last Jedi that plays homage to The Last Jedi, which is his difficulty in pressing the trigger down and essentially murdering his mother.
Yeah, I mean, it's the next part from that scene.
He's connected with her regardless of whatever relationship that they have, and ultimately she remembers that and recognizes that, and makes the hard call and sacrifices herself to redeem her son, to help her son.
And listen, it's beautiful. We could have a whole podcast on how brilliant it was that they use unused footage of her to have her in
the way. I gotta say, I was straight up shocked at how well they were able to have Carrie Fisher in this movie and have it have thematic weight and make the scenes make sense. I mean, the first time you see it, it's like, since you know what happened in the real world,
sure,
you can see some of the seams, but once you kind of get that out of, and that's yet another thing, like multiple viewings, it's that washes away, and the way that they're able to make dialogue echo, never underestimate a droid, and then Rey says it later in the movie. I mean, it's so remarkable how much they were able to use her in the story.
And her death pays off, and the fact
oh my gosh,
even with Maz Kanata, and I know it. I just want to make sure I'm saying it properly here. She is talking to R2 about what she has to do. Obviously, there's no footage left, right? Like, you understand that when you're watching it, and they make all that work. One more thing,
but it's so consistent with what her character does throughout the other 2 films of this trilogy too. Like, it's not so out of left field. It makes total sense.
And it ties into Luke's sacrifice on Crate.
Yep,
absolutely, and also to Ben Solo at the very end. One more thing on the Han Solo thing. Did anybody else catch this? And am I overthinking it? But when Ben is looking at Han, and he says, "Dad," and you think the next thing he's going to say to him is, "I love you."
Oh yeah,
I know.
Oh, yeah.
That's 100%.
What does Han say?
I know.
Dude, it's a callback to Empire. Yeah, that's what got me in the gut.
It's peppered with those moments.
Bro, Aaron, I'm telling you, dude. Listen again.
And that is not. I mean, and somebody might say, "Ooh, that's fan service," but I'm like, no, that's emotional gut punch, and they did it awesome. It was so good.
So
and they were
awesome.
intentional with it, and that's how it should be.
They did, and see, and I've told people this. We've had text threads about this, and I'm like, if there was any movie that needed to put fan service in it or rely on fan service for stuff, the ninth film in a 40-year plus year saga. I think they've kind of earned it.
Well, yeah.
They have earned it. All right, Courtney, I want to go back to you on what is potentially one of my favorite, certainly my favorite moment in this film, and top 3 to 5 in the franchise. First of all, Rey throughout the whole film, or however many times she does it, but she's like, be with me, with me. They won't talk to me. And then when she's lying there and she realizes that Ben Solo's possibly dead, her family, the fighters, the resistance, they are on the brink of death. Emperor's on the brink of taking over the universe once again, and she's trying to channel the past Jedi and be with me, and then it fades into space, and the first thing you hear is Ewan McGregor, Obi-Wan, say, Rey, these are your last steps. Which
final steps, right?
Final steps,
thank you. Final steps. Same thing, but yes, I want it to be specific. Thank you. It ties obviously into The Force Awakens when she touches Luke Skywalker, Anakin's lightsaber, and you hear him say to her, Rey, these are your first steps. So that's pretty amazing. And then you hear Hayden Christensen, Anakin Skywalker, say, Rey, bring balance to the Force like I once did.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Chills.
And then you hear, oh, dude,
all the chills.
I freaked. And then you hear Sam Jackson, Rey, rise, Rey. And then you hear Liam Neeson, Qui-Gon. You hear him say, oh, dude, and he,
and then Yoda,
then Yoda, and then
just peppers in all the original
Ahsoka,
voices from every piece of Star Wars content we've seen.
And they're all credited at
They
the
are.
end, by the way. I waited for the credits. Yeah, Hayden Christensen and Skywalker. Yeah, right. It's all there, and it's.
And
like,
I read an article,
man.
and like they were amazed they were able to keep that under wraps. That they were able to keep all of that kind of hidden before it actually came out. But that's been like I was looking at some stuff on Twitter, and like that's been one of the most tweeted about scenes of how like, oh my God, was it really them? Did they fake it? No, like they're credited, like they did it. They were in a booth, like they read it, like it's all thing. But it was so powerful. It was so cool. Again, I think that was one of those choices they made to bring everything full circle and to bring everything back to the beginning.
Absolutely.
I predicted it too, Rick. I mean, I don't remember in which show. Maybe it was the one that we did with Courtney first. But I said I fully expected Rey to have a Harry Potter moment where
you did say that. Yes.
Yeah. See, and I totally said that should happen. She would either see or hear, all the other Jedi that have influenced her or like her important. Yeah. Before she did some act and like either died or something, and that's exactly kind of what happens because when she like falls over and dies, I'm like, holy crap, this is like Harry Potter. But then I'm like, but then she's got to live, and then the way it plays out was just.
And I think it works that time versus the time before because she, like you said to your point, Rick, like she truly is desperate. Like she is really in a place where she has no other lifeline. When she's practicing in the forest and doing all this other stuff, like she's not desperate. Like she's training. Like she has no full desire to get these, to be with them, for them to come join her. So I think that's like where it changes for her. But it was beautifully done. I loved it.
It's so beautifully done. Then the payoff for her, and he's like, and I am all the Sith, and she's like, and you saw
it coming.
The line
said,
coming.
I am Iron Man, and then she snaps her finger.
And I am all the I am all the Jedi. It was like one of those moments of. Just pure.
It's like I am
joy.
Iron Man. Like you saw it coming. Like you knew it. You were just waiting for it to actually happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
you're no match for the power in me. Like it's such a goofy line, but I love it so much.
Well, then it ties into Aaron, your issue in terms of the payoff at the very end when she says she's a Skywalker. And this is one of the reasons I think that it's earned. First of all, I look at Leia and Luke as, in a sense, and really Han as sort of her adopted parents. A, B. Think about some symbolism of her taking on the name of Skywalker versus Palpatine. Yeah. Okay? Anakin Skywalker destroyed him first to save Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker inspired her.
I think he defeated Aaron.
Right? And then at the end, Ben Solo, who's a Skywalker,
saves
saved
a
her
Palpatine.
life. It helped her kill Palpatine.
And they even mentioned that. Palpatine even mentions that, right? When he throws him in the pit, he's like, this is the end of the last Skywalker or something, right?
And by the way, I think they did a really good job when people talk about, well, it ruins Anakin's arc in the first 6 films because he was, quote, the chosen one, which I always thought that was a little over the top anyway. But it's canon, so it is what it is. But we can talk about that all day long because he did die. He even says I died. But, he was able to come back, which was set up in Revenge of the Sith. And Emperor even says to her, and it's obviously very intentional, Luke, your master Luke Skywalker was saved by his father, but you have no family here. I'm your only family. And then the next thing you know, Anakin's talking, and then of course, right? So yeah, she has no family here to help her. Well, guess who helped her? Right? Yeah. A Skywalker and Anakin telling her, bring balance to the Force like I once did, saying to her, I did it, you can do it. Hell yeah, she deserves the last name Skywalker. Yeah. Mother effing yes, she does.
I mean, sure.
It's very
here's the thing. So
she just saved the entire universe.
The other way too is she could have totally course corrected the name Palpatine if she wanted to.
Yeah, but you know what? She gets to do what she wants at that point. Like
No, 100%. But I think the thing for me, kind of talking a little bit about the Emperor, is I hate the crawl.
Oh my gosh.
I hated the opening crawl, the dead speak.
That's
so not Star Wars.
Yeah,
to
it was
me.
a little weird. I'll give you that.
Oh, it's totally Star Wars. It really plays into the 1940s serial Flash Gordon Attack of the Clones. I mean, it's in that vein.
Yeah.
And it even says the Phantom Emperor, who is the
Phantom. I know. I caught that. I thought that was perfect. I thought that made perfect sense.
The Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
And come on, man. Come on,
but,
Aaron.
it's crazy that it's cool and it makes sense that the Emperor, is alive and he returns and stuff. But man, it just happens, right? Yeah. And they just do it right in the first 5 seconds of the movie.
5 minutes.
Yeah,
he's right there. And I think the problem that I had was they threw some of the things from a canon perspective out the window, like the idea of Sith. No one really knew what that is, but yet Sith is getting thrown around in normal conversation. Dominic Monaghan's character is oh yeah, he's a Sith Lord, blah blah blah. Dude, who are you? Where did you come? Where did you come from?
Just because we never heard that word in the original trilogy, we never heard the word Palpatine either.
The idea of Sith had been widely unknown. In all of the Star Wars, outside of the Jedi, the idea of Sith is not really known.
I don't know. I may be going a little out of left field, but my interpretation of it was there has been some significant time passed, and I think The Mandalorian also plays into this, just as another piece of comparison. And I think they're showing that so much time has passed that this education by word of mouth or whatever has kind of gotten around, and so words like Sith have become more common because of this
plus here's the other thing too, is he's, even though he's a random dude, he is part of the Resistance. Yeah, exactly. He talks and hangs out with Princess freaking Leia, right? I'm sure she knows what a Sith is. I'm sure. I mean, she's probably got everybody up to speed on some of this stuff.
Again, convenient plot.
And they've already and when the opening crawl does establish that Palpatine is giving this transmission and stuff, that probably has already meant that oh, who's this transmission? It might be Palpatine. Hey, Leia, what is this Palpatine dude? Oh crap, it's that guy. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they just kind of skip over it, but there's explanations for it.
By the fact that the Emperor's back, everyone's just oh yeah, the Emperor's back. Oh yeah, he's been pulling the strings all along. I'm thank you for telling us.
Well, Aaron, I know, but dude, it's Star Wars, bro.
I know, I get it. You know what I think the thing is
it's all a little cheesy.
It really is. The Last Jedi.
You're the Sith Lord.
Yeah, I know. The Last Jedi.
You're the Sith Lord.
To me, so the Last Jedi did a great job at elevating the franchise, right? Regardless of how, this is just me speaking for this film, and the layers of nuance that I continue to discover in the Last Jedi, is not found in any of this movie at all. Like, and everything is really on the nose. And I thought that's fine. I'm like, okay, so we're back to like having fun with Star Wars, and there's like not really a deep.
Too bad. Having fun with the movie.
I like having fun with Star Wars, but I also like being challenged in Star Wars, and that has been my biggest. And that has been my biggest thing about Star Wars in general. And it's the whole reason why the idea of having an Obi-Wan centered movie is wrong.
You don't like it, yeah?
No, it's that's the whole thing. It's like I don't like being served the story and the narrative like right here. Like I'd like to discover it. I like to work through it. I like to kind of feel it a bit more. And I don't necessarily think that this one did it for me like that way. And that's fine if it's different for other folks. Like, then this is why I'm really enjoying The Mandalorian as well, because it's different. It's something that's like, oh, we've never seen any of this stuff before.
I get that, but this is episode 9 of a 40 film, 40 year thing. Like that
doesn't mean that they didn't. That doesn't mean that they couldn't put in the extra work to kind of make it a little.
I do. Well, I did have a question for everybody though, because I do. I mean, it's kind of open ended, but I do think that having the 2-year gap between films hurt all 3 films. I think if it was 3 years between the films, like the other 2 trilogies, I think that would have served everything a little bit better.
I think I agree with that, but I also think if you look at it, maybe comparison to like the MCU and Marvel, like they have the Avengers films that come out with pretty big gaps in between them, but they serve you with other content that keep you up to speed. So had Star Wars had the resources of the Walt Disney Company earlier than they did, they may have been able to do that. And I think it's just they did the best kind of with what they have, knowing they had to have a deadline and, whatever. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, obviously, that we're not privy to. But I think if it had that setup, it would have been a little bit more successful in that case, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, that's sort of there. I mean, that's like all of the books and the
but it's not well consumed.
They're certainly
it's
layering.
Not like a comparison to.
No, it's not. It's not, and that's the thing. So for some folks who, and I knew that the Emperor was going to come back because the Aftermath trilogy books hint at that. So I was fine with that. I didn't mind that he was the big bad to a degree. I just thought it took a little bit of the fearsomeness that Kylo Ren had away.
But it didn't. That's fine if it did to you. It didn't to me, and it no more than it did to Vader, and because you think about it. Think about it. Vader's this ambiguous badass in Star Wars: A New Hope, and then in Empire Strikes Back, you see him kneeling to this other power. It's a little jarring if you really think about it.
But he is still. But see, the thing is about Vader. I mean, it's almost the same arc because Vader knows that this is his son, takes his hand off anyways. It's like, yo, whatever, dude, I'm taking this off. Like, beats the hell out of him with all of the stuff that's in that room, right? But then he has his wings clipped in the Return of the Jedi because he's starting to see cracks in the facade, which is great. It's a great arc for Vader, right? Because you start to see, Luke having that dialogue with him, like, I know that they're still good in you, blah, blah, blah. And here we go again. And this is the thing that I don't.
It's poetry.
I know. Yeah, okay, fine. It's poetry. Like, I struggle with that because, The Force Awakens was criticized for being an almost direct carbon copy of A New Hope, which I think is fine because it had a job to do, which is pull in new audiences and reinvigorate the franchise and reinvigorate the fandom. The Last Jedi was a completely different beast, right? And then we go right back to, here is the same kind of like story thread that you got from Return of the Jedi. I think that was maybe the
point. I think that's what they wanted to do is, to your point,
Thank
circle
you.
back and say, here's this huge 40-year generational piece of content that grandparents are seeing with their grandchildren, and they're seeing the same arc, and they're seeing the same circle, and they're connecting to when they saw that for the first time. And I think that's the point. I think that's why they made that deliberate decision.
It's also why they don't need to make any more Skywalker films.
Yeah.
I'm completely perfectly cool with this trilogy. Look, I will defend the prequels to my dying day, and I think in Revenge of the Sith remains one of my favorite Star Wars movies ever, and probably always will. But as a trilogy, I mean, episodes 1 and 2, and I will defend them, and I do watch them, and I do love them, but there's a lot of just... Those are not strong movies. Yeah. Right? You know what I mean? So we have a better trilogy with the Disney trilogy. than we did pound for pound for the prequel trilogy.
I agree with that.
And we should be grateful for that, right? And
agree.
again, this is someone who likes the prequels a lot, and but it's not like we went backwards, in my opinion. It's just not.
No. I don't. I'm not saying that either. I mean, I definitely think that this is. I wanted more. To be honest,
well, I mean,
that's what it comes down to.
That's because we're Star Wars fans, dude. We always want more.
100, yeah, no, and like I said, and anyone that enjoyed something that I didn't, good for you. Like that's awesome. Like I'm glad that worked for somebody else. You know what I'm saying? For me, I'm at a place with Star Wars fandom or Star Wars in general where I want to see a bit more of an evolution.
Well, and
that's the thing. If I get served, and I'll say this now, like if I get served something that I'm familiar with in the Obi-Wan series, I'm going to turn it off because I don't want to see things repeated anymore. I think this franchise is ripe for lots of really, really cool stories, ripe for things that are not Force related, and we're getting that with the Mandalorian. I mean, I think that's one of the mystiques.
Well, we are getting that with the Mandalorian, but we also have a guy that looks like Boba Fett, and we have Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying?
There's going to be some repetition.
I mean, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm just saying.
But you also understand what I'm saying. This is not point to something in the Mandalorian that you've seen before.
Well, I mean, we've seen
that's a whole other podcast.
Besides Jawas, okay. Here's the thing. Did you know Jawas could kick ass like that?
No.
Did you know that Sand People signed?
No.
To speak.
Well,
no.
They don't call them Sand People anymore, by the way. It's politically incorrect.
Tusken Raiders.
So it is. It's true. They don't.
Did you ever see that crazy chopstick lightsaber that Dark Ray had?
Yeah.
Damn,
dude, that scene.
Which, by the way,
that scene is awesome.
Yes. It's magical.
Freaking awesome.
I wish they wouldn't have shown any of that in the marketing.
Yeah.
Because
We
it
saw
was
at
super
D23.
fast,
They
too.
showed us that footage at D23.
Yeah.
I think it was. I think it was a way to like show you that you don't know what you expect from this movie. I love that scene when she hisses at herself.
Yes. Oh.
Was that?
Like if you go to my Twitter, I said I'm watching, Rise of Skywalker, and it was a GIF of Bilbo from Lord of the Rings when he has the teeth and he gets all pissed because he wants the ring. It's just like that scene.
It's so great. So
the Lord of the Rings fan, you know what I'm talking about.
I have one more kind of question for each of you, then we're going to do some plugs and get out of here. But before I do that last question, one thing we haven't discussed. First of all, let me just give a shout out to the cast.
Yes.
I love everybody. Poe.
Can we just talk about the banter between Poe and CP3O? Like it was so great.
Dude, oh my gosh, Poe and Finn were great. I think I was maybe it was Paul Herman, but or maybe it was you, Rick. I think this C-3PO this is probably the best role that C-3PO has had in any of the Star Wars films. He was so good. He was so funny. Like he was very integral to like the story and stuff, and the beats were perfect. Where he's like super underserved, and like the humorous moments, like where where that planet, whatever planet that is. Gosh, I keep forgetting. It's not Exegol, that's the main one, but the one where they meet Zori, and he's just like running. He's wearing the cloak, and he's like running, like, hopping up the stairs. God, that stuff was so funny.
So good. And BB,
let's go, Carrie Russell's character.
And Felicity Jones, her character's great.
Felicity
Carrie
Jones.
Russell?
Carrie Russell.
Also, if you
it doesn't matter.
She plays Felicity.
on the TV show Felicity. That's her character. But Carrie Russell's her name.
Yeah.
Oh, but her last name's not actually Jones on the show, right? Felicity Jones is a person.
I don't know.
She's an actress.
that inadvertently came out. Okay.
Dude,
Carrie Russell
Finn
plays
totally...
Felicity with J.J. Abrams. That's what.
That's great.
That's what.
And
I'm
she
trying to
actually, it's just side note, but she's on Dax Shepard's Armchair Expert podcast that came out last week, and she talks about like that whole experience. So if you got time, it's a good podcast.
Well, I'm sure it is, and the stuff that she does with her eyes, it's just great.
I just think
the whole cast was great. But
Finn totally needed his leash.
He's good.
Oh, he
needed
so
a
good.
leash. The whole show, the whole movie.
Listen, but Billy D. Williams, guys, man,
he was so good,
so good. Like,
give Leia my love. I love that. He's so good.
Oh, he's flying the Falcon again.
I know,
and they do it like 10 times. It doesn't get old.
I know. Like that's like half of his scenes are him like doing that laugh, and I'm like, I don't care. I love it.
So, and then I love the little sweet moment at the end where what's the character's name? The new girl. She's great. Oh my god, I'm going to blink.
Oh, yes. Oh, I don't remember her name either.
She has the space horses
Yes.
and she helps them out. Yeah, she's fabulous, but I've gone blank. But anyway, I like when she sits down. She was a stormtrooper.
Yeah.
But when she sits down and says, where are you from? He says, where are you from? She says, I don't know. He's like, well, let's go find out.
Yeah.
It's just so.
And
so
again, right
sweet.
there, that's another spinoff waiting to happen.
See, they should, and that's the one thing that I really wish is they do not pay off what Finn wanted to tell Rey. Like, they set it up like they mentioned it like 2 times, and you're just waiting. Like, okay,
I will agree
like,
with you.
what is
I
he
was
gonna-
disappointed that never came to fruition at all.
So what,
I mean,
what,
it's
what do
pretty.
you think it was?
It's pretty obvious. Just because he's force sensitive, he can detect things. And if you watch the movie multiple times, you see like, oh, there's multiple points in the movie where he just. I mean, at one point he says, "Oh, I just know it's a feeling," but there's other points where he knows things are happening. He's like, he knows Kylo Ren's coming.
Well,
he senses that,
it,
right?
He says it
Yeah.
too. He's like, he does say it's the Force. That's what he says.
Well, yeah, and then
When he's talking
mentions
to
it-
that other woman, he's like, "Oh yeah," she's like, "Oh, we just we turned."
Yeah, it's the it's
And
the
he's like,
Force,
"It's
and
the
I believe
Force."
in the Force, and he has like his Han Solo moment, and then you can go back and watch the Force Awakens and see and keep that in mind when you rewatch it. Like that's great for his arc, I think.
It's great for it.
But yeah, I wish they would have
and
kept
poor,
that in the movie.
Poor Rose Tico.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm mad about that too. They
She got stuck under the bed.
completely tanked her character.
listen,
like that was pitiful.
Listen, I hear a lot of that online, but the bottom line is this: she was in there. She had some cool moments. She was tough.
Not really.
Not
Not really.
Yeah, she had some.
She's barely in the movie.
Give me a line
like-
that she says. You've seen it 4 times.
I've seen it 3 times, and
3 times.
okay, and
Tell me a line.
and it's about other people.
Wait,
hey, Finn's on the ship.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, and then but like Finn just says Ray most of the time.
okay, look. Here's the deal.
Screaming it.
Was she Jar Jarred a little bit? Yes.
Hell yeah, she
Okay.
was.
Yeah, unfortunately,
She
I
was.
think
Oh,
she,
yeah, she
was.
was.
Unfortunately.
Yes, but
For how big of a role she had,
Yeah.
like, I mean, yeah, it's like, do you want to come with us and be on this adventure this time? Nah, Leia told me to stay behind for some reason.
Yep. Clearly, like the romance between her and Finn was killed.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I don't. Was it a romance? She kissed him.
She said she loved him. Like,
Yeah,
what?
well, it's a 2-way road, brother. I don't know. I was just thrilled that she was there. She was at the premiere.
She was friend zoned.
I was glad she was there and not completely
Right,
written
right,
out,
okay.
but man, like they could have incorporated her a little bit.
All right. Well, Aaron, before I've got one last question. Is there anything you just want to let rip? I don't want you texting me because I need to go to bed. You're not gonna text me and go, dude. I wish I would have said X, Y, and Z. Just say.
No,
say it.
I'm not gonna do that shit. I'll just do it tomorrow.
To tomorrow. On the text. You son of a bitch. Anyway.
No.
No.
Okay. There's no point. There's no point. I just I need to see it again. I've only seen it once.
I think that you're.
Oh yeah, you do.
I walked out going, yeah, okay, sure. If I were to give a rating for it right now, it'd be a B. Which obviously it doesn't. That I'm probably making it sound a lot worse than that. But yeah, it's just a B. But I prefer the other films over this.
And by the way, in a lot of ways, I do as well. Like The Last Jedi. I will fight online fan of my
and I'll be right next to you.
I think it's a brilliant movie,
Yeah.
and maybe in some ways, and I don't care who gets mad at me for saying this. I think maybe in some ways it was almost too good for this franchise, and you know what I mean by that. Like
Well, that's certainly what the reviewers of Rise of Skywalker are saying.
right. I'm just
The critics.
Yeah, right, and there's something a little bit to be said for that. But I do go back to Empire Strikes Back and say, I mean,
Empire is definitely the
juxtapose
gem in-
Empire and Return of the Jedi.
It's similar.
very similar to what
Yeah.
we have here, right? I mean, Return of the Jedi.
He even saw Ewoks in this movie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're in there. Wicked and his.
And it was, it really was, it was wicked.
It was wicked. All right, so aside from A New Hope, because that doesn't count. It's on its own. We said that already. Now that we're done with this 9-part saga, okay, we talk about the Mandalorian. We have that. We have the Obi-Wan series. Who knows what they're going to do with the films? I'd like to see them. They're obviously going to go away from Skywalker. They need to. Mm-hmm. But just reflecting back on this 9-part saga as it stands right now, and let's just assume it remains this way. Courtney, what do you think the legacy of the entire Skywalker saga would be? And by the way, I have a separate question for each person. What do you think the legacy of the Skywalker Saga will be?
I think it kind of, I'm circling the airport a little bit on this, but I really do think it goes back to this generational, union in a way, where it does have this reach from, grandparents to grandchildren and beyond. And it has a really good imaginative way of telling the story about the little guy and standing up for what you believe is right and finding the light within yourself and not being like, there's all these little underlying themes. And I think when the first thing people talk about when they talk about Star Wars, like, oh, I watched that when I was a kid, and it's grown adults who still love it. And I think that's hard to find if you look back generations back, like what other content can do that? And I think plain and simple, that's what they've tried to accomplish. And I think they've done a really, really good job with it. I think obviously advances in technology is another thing that you'll see as a common thread. Back in the 70s, like the technology that they were portraying wasn't even close to existing.
Like ILM, yeah.
A computer was a 4-story building at that point or whatever it was. And now it's just remarkable to see the jumps that it's made. And so I think that's another kind of a forward thinking process. So I don't know. And I think, and honestly, the creative side of me, it's a lot to just suspend your reality. Imagine that there's all these random creatures and worlds and you can jump into light speed and being able to unleash your inner kid. So I think there's a big part of it that really broke through the cinematic world and even just content in general. Nothing like that existed before, at least not on a scale that was consumable. And so I think when you look at it as a whole 9-part film package, it's done a lot for the generations of the creative mind and allowing people to connect on about something that isn't work, that isn't school, that isn't the car they drive. It's something that's a little bit more unifying in a way. Like here we are arguing about it, but still like we're united in really, spending time and admiring and having a connection to a piece of content that's going to pass our lifetime,
When I had my 5-year-old daughter, she crawled in my chair today while we were watching the movie, and I had this flashback of being at the theater with my parents and my sister. I have a sister 5 years older than I am. And they took us to Empire Strikes Back as a family. And then I remember going to see Star Wars with my mom in 81 when it was re-released as episode 4.
Yeah. I
used to have the timeline wrong in my head. I thought that was first because the movie was first, but it wasn't. It was like the re-release.
That's another legacy it has, is re-releasing or releasing out of order and messing everybody up.
Yeah, right. But right, exactly. But I'm thinking, oh my God, that was 1980. I was 5 years old. It's literally how old this child I'm holding in my arms. It's mine. It was such a trip, but it was a beautiful thing. So family legacy, I agree. Yeah. Ryan, what are your predictions for Disney Plus going forward? What do you think they're going to do with some of this stuff? And do you think in your answer that will there be anything with Solo again?
Oh, well, okay. So clearly we're going to get more Mandalorian.
Thank God.
Clearly we're going to get the Obi-Wan show. I think any kind of threads that we would have seen in a Solo sequel, we hopefully could, I know Aaron's rolling his eyes, but hopefully we could see in the Obi-Wan series, such as, Darth Maul, because that's the same time period, and Darth Maul might have a little beef with Obi-Wan. You know what I mean?
Do you think they'd revisit something that was done in Rebels already?
They are. I mean, they talked about that.
I think they could.
They are going to revisit some of that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I think they could, and I think, things that are in live action kind of trump anything that's happening in animation or in comics. Case in point, there have been comic book stories and stuff that explains where that were canon, that explains where Chewbacca's non-existent medal from episode 4 was from or whatever, but then he gets it, in the Rise of Skywalker, and it's glorious. So that's kind of undone. That is a retcon. That's retcon some of the explanations that we've already seen in the new canon. So that kind of stuff can happen. So, it seems like they're focusing on those shows for now. I hope what they do is let things play out like this and have one show that's Star Wars on kind of at a time, and then do things a little organically instead of trying to plan things out so much that they get into a situation like they had with the movies where they kind of jumped the gun a little bit, and they even said that, we made the movies too fast, we put too much out there or whatever. So they're obviously taking a step back with the films, especially now that the Game of Thrones dudes left their film, and we don't know what's really happening with Rian Johnson's trilogy.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, they still have the Untitled Cassian
we'll see.
Andor series that's going to be on Disney Plus. That's still
Oh
not
yeah,
even,
yeah. The Cassian, That's what we're having. The Cassian. I completely forgot about that. The Rogue One spinoff.
I think Ryan Johnson's going to direct some episodes and some stuff. I think he's going to be involved. I just don't think he's going to get his trilogy. And not just so much about Last Jedi Backlash per se. It's just I think they're just kind of pulling.
Weren't you adamant that he was going to get it though, Rick?
Well, at one point I was.
Did you change your mind?
Well, it's not that I changed my mind necessarily. I mean, I guess I did. It was, but it was an evolution of the circumstances that presented themselves at the time. The time when I said that, I will stand by that in retrospect. You know what I mean? Because of but they have obviously they're changing course.
Yeah, you didn't know what you didn't know.
Here's a question for you then. Will your mind change again if Rise of Skywalker underperforms?
Hey, you know what, Aaron? You don't come on as a guest of a show and act like a host like I do on yours, okay? I'm just kidding. Well, listen, I really didn't want to put any focus on reviews or box office on this episode because I just want to talk about our feelings on the movie, and because really at the end of the day, none of that shit really matters. But since you brought it up, here
I could care less.
Here's what I'm going to say. I don't think that this film's going to do even as well as The Last Jedi, and I think that it has some fatigue. My only thing is I really want it to cross that $1 billion mark. If it doesn't, that's going to be a problem. I think it probably will.
I think it definitely.
And if as long as it does, like if it goes above Rogue One and right around the Last Jedi numbers, then you know what, all good. And anybody wants to say that a new Star Wars franchise and or trilogy and all three are $1 billion plus films is a failure, you know what, you can just go back to your bullshit YouTube videos that dissect and say nonsense like that. Now, but to your larger question in terms of if it underperforms, I think X, Y, and Z, I really don't know. All I know is we got the Obi-Wan thing coming up, and I just want good Star Wars content, but I want them to chill out on. I definitely want them to chill out on the films. I think we need to take a 2 to 4 year break. Okay,
it's going to be 3. Well, that's what they've said at least.
Sure.
Yeah. Supposed to be 3. I don't know. They had the film dated, and it was supposed to be the Game of Thrones dude's film. I don't know if that date has now fallen off, but it's supposed to be 2022.
And Courtney, I just got your text with all the stuff from D23, the timeline, and that's great. Thanks for sending it. And all I'm saying, no disrespect to Lucasfilm or Disney, but I would even say that is. That they would, some of that stuff could change.
Oh, it's absolutely going to change. It's going to evolve. Yeah. It's going to change. They're going to move stuff around. Absolutely. But, I don't know. I think it's one of those things where they're going to go with whatever feels right in their gut. I mean, that's how Disney kind of runs things. They plan for something and then they turn the corner and they're like, oh crap, we got to reorder all this. And so then, stuff goes through the ceiling. But I think they've had such a positive success with The Mandalorian. I think they are going to, hopefully, fingers crossed, stick with streaming content for the foreseeable future, kind of ride it out, and then have a film back it up in the next couple of years.
Absolutely, and there's no telling where they can go when they realize that things are, first of all, they have a new medium now, right? They have live action TV, which is great, and they can test things out. It's not as toxic, right? And then also they're away from their legacy characters,
and it's not as expensive.
But. And that was, you know what? I'm not going to comment on. I was about to start talking about the Mandalorian. It'll go on for 45 minutes.
We need to do another episode on that.
I'm going to have you back on for a Mandalorian
Done.
show. Okay, Aaron, my question for you, and I'm actually going to change it a little bit since you brought up the box office. First of all, what's your box office prediction for Rise of Skywalker? And then where do you think? What do you think that your perception of this film is capable of changing after multiple viewings, or do you feel like you're baked in? So 2 questions.
Okay, so to your first question, I think it'll be like $1.1 billion.
Which I'm okay with,
so
man.
1.1 billion. I think it's fine. I think it's fair. I think it has the legs to do it. It's already kind of standing at close to 400,000 on opening weekend.
Yeah, it opened
international box office.
It's like 380.
It's like 350. Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
So
it came under The Last Jedi and obviously The Force Awakens on opening weekend. Look, We can talk about fatigue. We can talk about backlash. We can talk about all sorts of things. That's still a really high number.
100%. And it's also a competitive market. I mean, who would have thought that Jumanji would have packed itself right behind?
Counter programming. Yeah.
It opened a little early. I just hope it doesn't drop like a rock. But being that it's Christmas weekend, it shouldn't. Just cross $1 billion. That's all. Yeah. We're good. Okay, so you say $1 billion. That's your prediction?
Yeah, I think that's pretty safe. In terms of multiple viewings changing my perception, maybe. I think. Yeah, I mean, look, time could do that too. You know what I'm saying? Like, time could change. Time changes everything. I think where I am in my life could be impacting the way that I feel about this film. And, in 2 years, that could be completely different. So, look, it's not like I'm not going to watch it again. I certainly will. I just don't have the time right now.
Right. And are you excited at all for the Obi-Wan show? Do you feel better?
Here's the thing. Here's the thing about the Obi-Wan show. Yes, I am. Because Deborah Chow has delivered 2 of the best freaking episodes in The Mandalorian. Like, she's crushed it. So, if she's bringing that attention to detail and that direction to the Obi-Wan series, I think we're in for an amazing ride. Suffice it to say, though, the story has to be tight. If we end up doing some like reversal or some exploration or like things that are already known, that they just adding some additional meat to it, I'm like, come on, give me something different with Obi-Wan. Give me a different spin.
Are you relieved that it's not a movie and it's Disney Plus?
Yes, I'm very, very.
I actually was disappointed at the beginning. I'm actually glad now, and some of it's self-serving.
Me too.
We're going to get more Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan, and I wish they probably. I watched Solo again the other day. I still just feel like that movie's just it's good. It feels good, but it's that should have just been something on Disney Plus as well. Okay, great conversation, guys. Let's do some plugs and get out of here. Go to bed. A lot of us have to get up super, super early, including myself. Aaron. Real quick, man, we're going to do plugs. We're going to start with you since we were just talking. Give us.
Sure. Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Starting Sith. Please do also follow our podcast, The Fanboy Garage Podcast, at The Fanboy Garage. We're also on Instagram, Facebook. Working on getting a YouTube page up and running. But that's it. We just dropped our own The Rise of Skywalker sort of review with another podcast. So be sure to check that out. That will drop on Monday.
And is it just you and Chris on that show?
Yeah, me and Chris. I'm sorry, you can find him at Real Seal Mighty as well. So he's a little bit more put together than I am.
Put together, yeah. Chris is a great guy, man. Ryan, plug something for us.
What?
Buddy.
Oh, just follow me on Twitter at SMB_Ryan. Follow the Batman Podcast Network at BatPod Network. And I guess one of my final comments is that after all this time, after 40 years, I think the Emperor probably could get a good job at like a fast food restaurant because he has all these different orders. He's got first order,
the
order
dad
66,
jokes coming in hot,
and the final order. Like he's not very original. So
oh boy,
just gotta say that multiple Death Stars and multiple orders. That's the Emperor in a nutshell.
Planet destroying
by the way,
blaster.
I have a plan. I'll have another order.
And by the way, JJ got another Death Star in this movie. Just FYI.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, ships with Death Star cannons.
By the way, I had a buddy text me who's not. He hated it. Okay, he hated it. He thought it was just all heavy-handed fan service, and I was arguing with him about it. He's like, dude, because the only thing that film was missing was Hayden Christensen's Force Ghost firing Kathleen Kennedy.
Oh boy! Oh,
come on!
And it is like much as I disagree with him, that was actually pretty funny. Just because that's clever, that's funny because it was like to him it was like written and directed by Reddit. We've seen that meme or whatever. Anyway, I disagree. But Hayden Christensen's Force Ghost firing Kathleen Kennedy, whatever. Who, by the way, Kathleen Kennedy's a badass. Back off. All right, yes. Courtney Cheek, plug something.
You can follow me on Twitter at Courtney Cheek, just all one word, CHEEK. So no S on the end, only one cheek, not two. And then Instagram, I'm Courtney Elizabeth Cheek. But yeah, so thanks for having me on. This has been really fun, and I love the film. I love films in general. So I think it's been a really good homage to tying everything up with a nice little bow. But
I do as well. I think it was a nice little send off, and my wife agrees. And I just that be with me. All the Force Ghosts talking to her, then her getting up and kicking the Emperor's ass, and then becoming a Skywalker. It's my favorite. It's my favorite ending to a Star Wars movie. With that said, again, A New Hope is always. I'm
just hoping that we're going to see more badass female leads coming into this Star Wars cinematic universe.
Dude, we got 2 females kissing in this movie.
I know. How great was that? Just keep it rolling.
But anyway, but Empire Strikes Back, The Last Jedi, and Revenge of the Sith are still my 3 favorite Star Wars movies. Just FYI. Okay, let's wrap this thing up. Aaron, I'm going to have you help me out with this, right? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready, New York? Okay, guys, follow me on Twitter at ShewRick, ShewRick. Please remember to follow Batman on Film. Follow us everywhere. Ryan, you're doing the Instagram page. Follow us on Twitter, on the Facebook page. If you're a cool fan and you don't want to troll and be a jerk and just want to have a lot of fun, follow us on the Batman on Film private Facebook page. I'm an admin on that, so if you're cool, let me know. I'll accept you. You know what I'm saying? That's a really fun page. If you're on Facebook, join the Batman Facebook page. And Batman, like I said at the top of the show, starts principal of photography here in just a few weeks. And guys, that is the forte of Batman on Film is solo Batman films. So we are pumped, we're excited, and we're going to get a lot of really cool stuff coming probably in January. Maybe even Mr. Robert Pattinson in a bat suit. What up? Everybody ready for that?
I'm excited.
I'm down for that.
I'm excited for it. It's going to be awesome.
Yep, I am as well. So anyway, on that note, we're going to have our definitive send-off, but I'm going to have my friend from New York help me out here since Bill and I are the Texans. All right, you ready? Aaron, you ready?
Yeah.
All right. And as always, Batman on Film, authoritative, definitive,
and the dadgum original.
Yeah, baby. All right, announcer Rachel will take us out.
Hey now, you've been listening to the Batman on Film podcast, a proud member and the sponsor of the Batman Podcast Network, batmanpodcastnetwork.com. You can listen to the BOF Podcast on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, TuneIn, and wherever good podcasts like this one can be found. Want to advertise on the BOF Podcast? Go to advertisecast.com/the Batman on Film Con podcast. Follow Jet on Twitter at Batman on Film and on BOF's Facebook fan page at facebook.com/jet.batmanonfilm. Email Jet via jet@batman-on-film.com. I'm announcer Rachel. Thanks for listening.